You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.
The world of 1916 was complex, or the world of 1945 was complex. The world of 2016 is intensely complex. You'll be dealing with terrorists. You'll be dealing with hybrid armies. You'll be dealing with little green men. You're going to be dealing with tribes. You'll be dealing with national leaders and local leaders. You'll be dealing with politics and economics. You'll be dealing with direct fire and indirect fire. And you're going to be dealing with it all. And it's all going to be dealt with simultaneously.
Well, 2nd of November, Wednesday here, Tinfoil Hat Club. I forgot to mention, for the meantime, what I'm going to be doing is the shows for Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So there'll be 3 shows a week for now, and we'll just see how that goes. Well, I'm going to be heading out for Montana over the weekend. I was going to go over there and minister. I have gotten to know some people on the Indian reservations over there and had already done that. I had mentioned before with the Kootenai Blackfoot, and now there's some need for others. But it also gives me a chance to get out of the office with all the Wi-Fi and microwave that's being bombarded here. I was mentioning just a little bit ago that as soon as I actually leave the office complex, that it lessens about 50% and it becomes tolerable. But to be here with everything is quite stressful. So it gives me a chance to get out of here. So that'll be interesting. I don't know. I'll be talking a little bit about it. Now, I will try and have a guest on here in a couple of weeks that's more familiar with the lawsuits that took place against the Catholic churches there on the reservations in Montana and various other places where there was abuse, molestation of the young boys by the Catholic priests, which were all Jesuits. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but they've got more information on that. They're more involved in help getting that back in order, because you can imagine the chaos that has brought onto everyone over the years, and it's been going on a very long time. Now, you'll notice the name of the show tonight. It's going to get a little heavy, but I want you to understand that the way history has been written, the way it's been portrayed to us, has all been a lie. And it's all been a massive cover-up for the genocide of the Native Americans. And as I go through all of this, I want to try and tie it all together with the Masons, the Illuminati, Albert Pike, George Washington. It's just amazing what has been, brought into this country, the so-called Puritans, the settlers, wasn't white, quite like we were told, and it's pretty shameful. And I mentioned before that the Kootenai Blackfoot that I had administered to, that I made a formal apology to him for what white men have done to him, for what the United States government, which is and there was a amazing influx of the Holy Spirit to mend, to heal, to make right. It really was. And by the way, this week has been an incredible week for deliverance. I had two very strong ones this week that I believe had made some headway, which also included American Indian. And so this country, how it's been established, and what its purpose has been over the past, several hundred years, has set the stage for the New World Order, for the World War III that's coming. And I want to mention real quickly about Hillary. Now, everything is by design when it comes to the media. I don't care if it's Fox. You think they're conservative. No, they're just another implementation to give left-right paradigm controlled opposition. And so whatever they're going to do with this so-called Hillary, emails, this potentially has written all over it to postpone the election. Okay, there, just because a Democratic Party, if their candidate is not available, there's the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party. There's several others, and they'll never mention it. They'll never talk about that. And so just because the so-called, Democratic side would not have a candidate because of potentially fleeing the country or, in change, they would do that. And so this may be by design. So just keep an eye on it. Again, don't believe everything that you see. Now, before I get going here, I want to mention I believe that I have gotten to most of my emails, and I believe that I have returned most of the calls. If I did not call you and you were expecting, please call again. I really got hammered. I really got nailed here, and between the requests come in different ways, and I try and get it just so it's email and by phone call. If they do the YouTube and all the others, then that gets really confusing. So if I missed you, I apologize. It was a matter of logistics to get it done. So if I've missed you, please call again or email me again, and I'll try and get you in this week before I head out, because I will not be here over the weekend. All right? All right, World War I. Now, we have talked a lot about Albert Pike, and we've even talked about World War I and World War II and the pending World War III, the establishment of Israel. I've done all that before, so I'm not going to go into it in any depth because I want to get into the American Indian. But I want you to comprehend something. Now, over the past year, we've made a lot of people mad at us for talking about Judaism, Israel, and so forth. But I want you to comprehend and understand what's really going on here. The book of Revelation is very clear that that is part of the deception. Now, with Albert Pike and Morals and Dogma, and Julie's even talked about it, that World War I was basically from 1914 a controlling and overthrowing of Russia to alter and change the banking system, the religious system, everything, to be put into place 1, 2, 3 for domino effect. World War II basically was a reestablishment or a insertion, regardless of what took place, of communism. Okay, Marxism, all of this stuff comes out of Judaism, right? And then the establishment of Israel, which is really the command center for the Illuminati, all right? So this whole thing for setting the stage putting, the Jews against Islam with the support of the Christians. So beating the war drums, this whole thing is staged. And I want everyone to understand that Freemasonry comes out of Judaism. Okay, in Israel and Zedekiah Caves and various other places, they meet quite regularly there for their ceremonies. And I knew a pastor in Arizona who went on a typical Israel trip, and he went down in there, and he was reading the plaque that was the dedication to the Freemasons, okay, because all this comes from Solomon, okay, this is all part of that system, and he became so ill that they had to take him out of there. And as soon as they got out of the cave, he recovered. He was near possibly having a stroke or heart attack. And so that is, shows you the spiritual influence that when the realization of what's really happening, the opposition that can come in the spiritual sense can be so overwhelming that you can become sick and nauseated. And many that I do deliverance on, you become sick and nauseated when the demons are coming out. Okay? And then joy comes in the morning. All right, so from that, we get the Jesuits, the Knights Templar, again, the Freemasons, the Illuminati. All of it is a structure to be broadcast around the world for the overthrow of governments, for the reestablishment of the Luciferian doctrine, to remove God, to remove Jesus, to remove any form of free thinking. It's a bondage. Because under, this, as I did the Freemason renouncing curses on Scott Hensler Network, if you haven't gone to those, and by the way, with a lot of new listeners, on my YouTube channel for Second Heaven Invasion, I have the playlist for 30 shows that are all the chapters in Second Heaven Invasion. And if you go to scotthensler.org, on the right-hand side, you'll see the link for YouTube. And then a Tinfoil Hat Club. So those are the two main sites. I was basically running scotthensler.org for Scott Hensler Network, and Julie and I don't know how many hours of we did over there, but if you go to that, there's just hundreds and hundreds of shows, as well as the shows that are here for Tinfoil Hat Club. And the problem is that when we were exposing the true agenda behind the Messianic Judaism lie, then a lot of people got upset, and it was a kind of a fiasco. But you know what? It's fact and it's truth. And when you research it, you'll find out their true agenda, which I'm going to be tying in with the Native American genocide. Okay? And you need to understand that what goes around comes around. So we've got some issues and some problems coming here in the United States. And we know that. That's why you're listening. So again, we started doing the show with Tinfoil Hat Club. Now, with the Jesuits, the Knights Templar, the outreach of the Vatican, of the Catholic Church, the Masonic establishment in Washington, D.C., for the New World Order, with the Britain's governmental laws, putting us basically all here in America under the bondage of that doctrine. So the Constitution isn't as quite what we would think, and I'm not really going to get into that because there just isn't enough time. But you do understand that when we give up our sovereignty, when we give up who we are as an individual and place ourselves underneath, like Washington or the United States is a corporation, and I've talked about that. It's all in the establishment of the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergers, okay, the Rockefellers. All of these guys have been putting this in, the Federal Reserve, the IRS, now we've got the Department of Homeland Security, we've got FEMA. All of this stuff is part of this end times, along with the United Nations. Okay, that whole thing is for a new world order. So putting us in this bondage puts us in the world court system, okay, taking away everything that was our God-given rights. Now, they'll say that we have inalienable rights, we have God-given rights, but try and stand in a court now and claim that. Okay, it's not going to work so well for you. And, of course, the banking system, the ones who control and run the money are the ones that basically are going to, run the world, and they know that. That's what the Rothschilds have been doing all along. And so whenever you have a country that will not go along with the plan, that want to stay on their own gold system, then the dogs, the lapdogs of the United States, the U.S. military, and this is not giving troops a hard time. God bless you, men and women, for wanting to serve correctly. But you need to understand the order of things, that the Pentagon has been under, the demonic control for a very long time. The CIA, the Mossad, that's, they're the implementers of ISIS. This whole thing with 9/11, most of you know all about this, that we have to understand that our men and women have been sacrificed in order to implement the new world order, the new banking systems. So we'll go into a country, we take them out, they go in and they establish the new banking systems, and so, again, you have world control. Now, the Revolutionary War was also a part of this. You do need to understand that whenever you have numbers of people and you cannot take them forcibly, you can give the indication or an example of war, then to bring a unification of people together and then basically slip in a government that they'll fall for. Unfortunately, the churches today, Christianity, has been just that. This has nothing to do today with the Church of Jesus, because the Word of Jesus tells us to do certain things, and these churches are not doing it, so therefore they are not of Christ. And I am first-handed knowing exactly how that is. I've mentioned before all the issues and the problems that I've had with the churches just simply trying to do what Jesus has commanded us to do in Matthew 28. The opposition is of Antichrist, period. And when we look at Constantine, we look at the Baptist Church under the establishment of the Masons, all of this, the religions being established in place under morals and dogma by Albert Pike, as he said he would do. He has done it. Everything has been successful. Then comes along the Civil War. The Freemasons sponsored the events funded, organized by the Rothschilds. The North, August Belmont, he was a presidential advisor. Now, you're going to need to understand that they were all under Jewish influence. So with Lincoln, that was the influence for him then to take a stand against the South. Judah Benjamin, again, Secretary of the State of the Confederacy. There again, we have the Jewish connection. And so the basic idea, even Lincoln himself, with the letters and the funds and the support by the Jews to continue to make this war. Now, this whole thing, again, we need to understand that Albert Pike was a general of the South, And you've heard the name Manzini, He had, at that point in 1834, had taken over the Illuminati, and he was in direct contact with Albert Pike. And so this whole thing, basically sowing, a disillusion, a debate of slavery being the main focus, when in reality it wasn't. It was more to keep the southern slave owners or the businessmen in profit with slave labor. This didn't have anything really about setting people free. It was to keep them established in that. But this was, again, we need to understand that there was an attempt to split the United States for England and France. Not a lot of people talk about that. But in this, Pike, the top Mason, who was quickly becoming the top Mason for Europe and America, and some state that he was already in control at that time at the point of writing Morals and Dogma, which states there must be a World War I and a World War II. So the Civil War, again, was another implementation of division amongst the people within the United States, brother killing brother, blood being spilled, spiritualism being released, because remember, need to remember, this is all under Luciferianism. And so this then put back in place a recontrol of the banking system by the Rothschilds. Okay, and this, by the way, Lincoln was trying to stop this. Okay, he was in opposition against Albert Pike, and we need to remember Albert Pike, Jesse James, John Wilkes Booth, the Knights of the Round, Manzini, all of these guys. Then, we know how that worked out. Lincoln was assassinated. Basically, the blame was put on John Wilkes Booth, who did not die in that fire in the barn. Like they said, he lived his life out fully. It was all planned. Again, the fact that Lincoln was a stumbling block, and I'm not going to support Lincoln because Lincoln was also very instrumental in the genocide of the Native American people. And believe me, the Native American people do not think highly of Lincoln. Okay. So also in Lincoln's cabinet were the Masons, and they were the ones that basically covered up the conspiracy to kill Lincoln and blame it solely on John Wilkes Booth. So you need to understand that when it comes to Masons, a Mason will never hang. Otherwise, the court systems are full of Masons. The law enforcement agencies, the county prosecutors, all of that are basically infiltrated with Masons. Okay, so that means that they will never go against another Mason. Okay, so the history that was rewritten by the Masons, and so we only know what they've wanted us to know. Now, during World War II, it was very well known, Germany, U.S., France, England, that in the foxholes, that if two soldiers, otherwise, a Nazi makes it into a foxhole of an American, and whether they have a pin, whether there's an understanding of the Masonic Brotherhood, they would not kill each other. They would crawl out of the hole and go into another one and kill the enemy that was not a Mason. Do you understand that? Okay, if it was potentially known who they were up against was a Mason, they would not do that. Now, Congress has been under the Masonic rule from day one. And basically what we have today, we've got even more corruption with homosexuality, with pedophilia, all of the disgusting, horrible things that comes out of Luciferianism. And this is one of the reasons that there is no opposition against executive orders, and has been. So you've got someone like Obama that is a Masonic, puppet of the Freemason, of the Illuminati, who is, doing everything illegal, should be arrested, should be incarcerated, tried, you name it. He's done everything to break the laws of this country. And Congress is not going to do anything. So I don't care who you vote for. You have to understand this. It's going to be business as usual. They have a plan. They're going to bring it through. And the only thing that we can pray for and hope for is divine intervention. I believe that a lot of this would have already taken place in a further example, but there has been divine intervention. They're behind in their schedule, okay? So let's get back to the American Indian, establishing that everything's been corrupt from day one, that there was a mass extermination of the American Indian beyond anything that the history books would ever tell you, okay? Okay, whether it was a relocation, re-education camps, the Catholic Church had their hand in the whole thing, okay? And we also need to understand that whenever we have these establishments, that because of the lawsuits and what's been exposed, that there's been molestation of young boys, girls as well, of course, any time that the Catholic Church has been in place. And we need to understand that who is really running this, that when we look at the Jesuits, when we look at Knights Templars, when we look at those all the way back to the Vatican, it's the same people. okay, the Luciferian doctrines, bringing in those things from Solomon, bringing those things in all the way back from the Tower of Babel. It's a Babylonian system that has never gone away. So with the lawsuits that have been completed in Montana, with judgments against the Catholic Church, paying out restitution to the children, many of them are full adults now, and many of them are actually elderly people. That's how long this has been going on. Okay, now let's examine Jesuits, okay, like the Pope. He's a black Pope, he's a Jesuit, okay? So basically, when you want to become a Jesuit, you submit yourself to the MK Ultra mind control. There can be a minimal of 90 days of trauma-based mind control monarch, okay? So basically, they're breaking them, and they're able to be programmed. They're able to have them do whatever they want them to do. So whenever you see a Jesuit in their black attire, you need to understand they are MK Ultra, period. Okay, period. And so those that were then sent out to the Indian reservations, remember they're broken people. Now they're dangerous, they're assassins, very well educated, usually of a higher intelligence, usually of a physical ability to do whatever they needed to do. Many of the overthrows around the world, especially down in South and Central America, has been because of that implementation, okay? All right? So they were basically dispersed all over the world as axemen, teachers, saboteurs, okay? Assassins, period. All right. Now, again, getting back to the American Indian, that with this extermination, the U.S. military, now you remember that, we go all the way back to George Washington, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, all the way up through Lincoln, through the through the 1800s, and even into the beginning of the 1900s, that even with the involvement of civilians, there was a distribution or handout of blankets laced with smallpox, and some of you are familiar with that. So there was a massive effort to infect, to kill, to eliminate all American Indians, okay? I've talked extensively about the Trail of Tears. In fact, when I witnessed or when I ministered to the gentleman a few weeks ago over in Montana about the Trail of Tears, there was another spiritual breakthrough. It was amazing. I'm telling you, I'm now dead set that this has to be definitely a part of my ministry. It always has, but I mean now I have a foot in the door into the reservations that I didn't have before. And so this is wonderful, because you do understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this country is under a curse. And by the forgiveness and the implementation of the blood of Jesus Christ, these curses are broken. And we must start at the beginning. And this is part of that. So I'm very proud to do this. Now, with the roundup of hundreds of thousands of Indians, American Indians, and tribes that basically were the basis of the Cherokees, was of the Trail of Tears. So with the relocation, many of them were starved, the elements, they were elder, they couldn't do the walk, you can imagine. So there were just thousands and thousands and thousands who died on that way. Okay, and the elders of the tribes cursed the presidency, okay, that they would die in office, and if you look at the history of it, that did take place, okay, all right. Now, with the land that was taken from them, this particular land that they were going after, not only was it already established as farming, you need to understand that the American Indian was already proficient at farming, already had the ability to do crops, to do irrigation, knew about fertilizing, knew about, believe it or not, knew about hygienics. They knew how to take care of human waste. They knew how to take care of their dead. They knew how to take care of their bodies and their teeth. Okay, the settlers that we had in, basically the Europeans, they weren't so clean. Okay, so they basically turned everything around and tried to make them the savage when in reality we were the ones. I'm sorry. Look at the disease. Look at the Black Plague. Look at the mass murder and the killing that took place in Europe and all the things. And we have the gall to say that was the reverse here. No, I'm sorry. That's not the way that it worked out. Okay, so the lands that were taken too, because since the Masons were already into Luciferianism, into sorcery and divination, that's what it is, that many of these areas, many of the lands that the Indians had also had spiritual connections. We also need to understand that there were Adamic races here, Nephilim, giants, still here to that day, okay, and so this again, with them wanting the military, the potential secrets of this race, okay, with the spiritual abilities, the fallen angel technologies, this was another reason for the mass genocide, was to go into these areas, take it over where there were portholes, I don't want to say stargates, but a spiritual opening, the veils, the ley lines, all of these places where you see Masonic lodges that have been established all over the United States have to do with some spiritual connection of a ley line, where there's empowerment, where when they do their ceremonies, that there is an exchange of powers, okay? All right, and you'll find that our military bases today are in these particular areas. So when you see like whether it's Scott Air Force Base or some of the others, there's a connection there, okay? There may be quarters. When I used to visit the asylum in Arizona for a gal that was unfortunately had a breakdown, when you would enter in the very middle of it was a high security area that looked like it was a high level jail, prison. Well, in there was the criminally insane. And just to witness or visualize this particular building, the way that it was structured with the barbed wire and the fencing and fencing again, that many of the bases are like this, that they're top secret and only certain individuals are allowed into certain areas, okay? All right, so with the implementation of genocide, there was also the use of the children and young adults as slave labor, as unfortunately ceremonial children in the Masonic lodges, in the Jesuits, in the Catholic churches, basically the occult, the Luciferian sacrifices, the sodomy, all the stuff that would take place. These children were horribly, horribly abused. Okay, and so what they did is when the Jesuits came in, they would make a covenant with the Indians, with the leaders, trying to turn them into Masons too. By the way, if you look at the way the show's laid out, you'll see some of the pictures there that there were actually some lodges that were established for Indians. Okay, and what they were doing, the Indians, they were thinking that they were coming into brotherhood or that they were going to finally come to a peace, but that wasn't the whole point. The whole point was to get the elders to turn in the medicine men. Okay, and what the elders would do is they were given black cards, and what they were told to do then, to hand these cards out to the medicine men or the witch doctors or the elders that basically were the ones with they called them the pipes, okay, and the stacks, meaning that they had the spiritual ritual items that they would use in their ceremonies and history and anything that had to do with it. And the whole point of it is that when a medicine man would come forth or an elder with a black card, the Jesuits would kill them. And then the pipes and the stacks and the information that would have led, to the history of their particular tribes were all thrown into the fire. So this whole thing was a lie to deceive them, to bring them into submission, to wipe out any history the main idea was they referred to it as killing the Indian in them, not necessarily them as themselves, but they saw that the Indian was a threat because of their spiritual abilities. Okay, so this was a threat then to the Masons. And so, like I said, all the items, anything that had to do with the history, anything the beliefs, anything that had to do that tied with the spiritual ability to open the veil and communicate and do whatever they did, they had them thrown in the fire. Okay? So there is a conscious effort with many reservations now to bring that back. Where I'm going to is trying to do that. That's how I ended up knowing some of the people there and working with them. So this is going to be interesting. It's just started, so we'll see how that all works out. And what they're trying to do is reverse the curses, because alcoholism, drug abuse, poverty just absolutely curses the people, which was all by design, those who were on the reservations. And you know, we're familiar with that and how sad that it is, okay? So the American Indian has one of the lowest life expectancies in the West. I don't know whether you're familiar with that. So if you're born on a reservation, chances are you're not going to make it to a ripe old age. Now, the Thanksgiving lie, you know, we celebrate Thanksgiving as if there was a coming together with the American Indian, and that was not the case at all. The American settlers, as I mentioned, being also of Masons, were greedy, were selfish, were basically godless, okay, because Europe was in very bad shape then as well. And we need to understand that when they came here, they also saw a land that was full of riches, full of gold, full of whatever they wanted to basically partake out of it, okay? And so they were very barbaric about how they approached the American Indian, who was already established with farming, as I mentioned, and irrigation and taking care of themselves. And so when they came here, they basically were stripping the land, looking for gold and everything else, and wasn't taking care of business when it came to the severe winters that we, you know, the Eastern would have, because that's where the establishments were, even though some of them down south. That you know, they didn't get into getting crops and ready for the winter. And so they actually ended up digging up some of the Indian corpses and eating them over the wintertime. Okay, do you understand now? That kind of adds a whole new prospect to Thanksgiving. And so they ended up then kidnapping, they ended up using as prisoner force, making the Indians teach them how to survive, how to do crops, how to farm, how to do whatever it took to prosper. And when they finally established themselves to a point, and the ones that they had finally come into agreement with to help them, that in this, what they did is they brought them for a toasting to honor them, and they basically poisoned them, killing 200 American Indians. You bet you're not going to find that in history books. Okay? They didn't need them anymore. They felt that they had gotten to a point where they understood the land, they understood the weather, they understood the soil and how they could farm and everything else, and now the mass extermination took place. And so from the 1700s, ladies and gentlemen, 80% of the budget was for the attacking of the American Indians, called the American Indian War, taking their developed land, basically exterminating 95% of the U.S. population at the time. That means hundreds of millions total over the years were exterminated. Do you understand that? The American Holocaust. We had a Holocaust here. Okay? They would go village to village, basically killing women, children, men. You know, you got to remember the repeating rifle, the advanced weapons of the time. You know, muskets still were used heavily then, but you know, along with smallpox and along with all the others, burning out their crops, so they would starve over the winter, rounding them up, Just absolutely amazing. And I want you to understand that George Washington gave this order, the 33rd degree Mason man himself, when he was in office. Okay, his basic statement was, Indian country must be destroyed. Jefferson himself said, pursue Indians to extermination. Do you understand? Do you understand now why we have a curse on this country? Do you understand why our government is in the decrement that it is? Even the governor of California, now those were territories, okay, 1849 to 1851, stated publicly the continuance of the extermination of the American Indian must continue. Now with this of exterminating the elder, the ones of potential fighting age, that then they would have the women, they would have the children and the younger men basically brought into a slave labor, but also into a massive lust. Okay? This is one of the reasons we have such a mixture of, you'll meet somebody and say, well, I have, certain percentage of Indian in me. There was a lot of barbaric stuff that went on. And so when it came to the young boys and the young girls, we need to understand that the Luciferian doctrines continued as business as usual. And again, that is confirmed by the fact of what was just established as lawsuits against the Catholic Church. Okay? Again, we had the Indian boarding schools, they referred to it. Okay? And the basic Richard Pratt stated, kill the Indian in them. Not them, but kill the Indian in them. That's what the boarding schools were all about. Again, trying to force Christianity onto them as well as Catholicism. Okay? You can understand that Christ is not in that. It's got nothing to do with the true Christianity in itself. So basically, they went around cutting their hair, dressing them, like young men or young girls in dresses, taking away their heritage, taking away what they knew, and forcing them to basically become what they wanted. Okay? To basically accept Christianity and Catholicism. Okay? That became a federal policy. That became a federal policy. All right. So even the children today, like the Lakotas, are being taken. Now, we've talked about Queen Elizabeth and what took place up in Canada with the elimination, basically the queen herself being the queen lizard, the reptilian herself. There's information showing that she actually ate and consumed these children after the rituals of those things that took place, that a world court order has been placed for the arrest of Queen Elizabeth. You do know that. I hope so. Okay? But because, again, no Mason will hang, that there will always be intervention. We need to remember, too, that she's not human, and so her essence then will just simply transfer her over to something else, especially the age of her. So as this continues through America, 1 out of 3 Indian women will be raped. 1 out of 3 American Indian women, even of today, will be raped. Now, I want you to understand that here in the deliverance ministry, that many of the people that I minister to, now I'm sorry this is hard to take, but I want you to understand that I'm tying this together about what's going to take place with us. Okay? The American Indian to this day in the court system, because of the policies, the federal policies, are still seen as a second-class citizen. Okay? And this curse that's placed upon them, so you got to remember, Lucifer doesn't play fair. The demons don't play fair. That whenever there's an abomination that takes place, whenever there's a blood sacrifice of the innocent, whenever there's those things that are a spiritual connection to the demonic realm, that a stronghold, an entry point, the ability to own or run the land by the demonic is established until the blood of Jesus Christ comes in to remove it. That's why Christianity was corrupted, because in the true commandments of Jesus Christ, this stuff would have never have taken place. And what has happened can be reversed. You need to understand that. These things can be altered and changed and reversed. Now, I want you to understand that this is also taking place all over the world. History repeats itself over, and over again. And it is taking place. Now, as I mentioned, that the elders of those of the Trail of Tears cursed the presidents, and that they would die in office, and which did take place. That with this curse that has come from all these presidents, so we need to understand that the presidents that we've known all share the same bloodline, including Obama and the Bushes. Do you understand that? Because they do come from the black nobility. Okay? So they're all part of this system. Now, I want you to take a moment, and I want you to understand that with the infiltration into the Christian church of the Christian Judeo system, that the implementation to support Israel, to bring what is known as the dispensation, that to edify, to sell your birthright for acceptance of the so-called Jews, which are not of, they're not the Hebrews, they're not the bloodline of Moses, they're not the bloodline of Abraham. They say they are Jews, they are not, they are the synagogue of Satan. You need to understand this, that everything that we're seeing today, because again, as I mentioned, that if the blood of Jesus Christ had been implemented correctly, as was intended, that the Masons would never have been established, the extermination of the American Indian would have never have happened, World War I, World War II, Civil War would not have taken place. Do you understand that? But because of the infiltration of the Illuminati through the Masons, through the other acts, that the contamination of the so-called American Christian Church has taken place to the point that the true essence, the true air, the true meaning behind Jesus has been removed, and every effort is being taken to remove Jesus now. If you're in the military, even mention the name of Jesus, you can be court-martialed. So, do you understand that? That's what's taking place. Okay. So, with this in itself, you need to understand that the Jews see themselves, because remember, they're the ones who call themselves Jews are the offspring of the fallen angels. They have a bloodline of the reptilians. That what they're implementing today is a genocide of what we know as white race. See, we're not considered, we're goyim. We're nothing more than scum. We're nothing more than food or extermination or experiments or roaches that need to be gassed. Okay? So again, this is part of the 6.97 billion, the elimination of the world, basically, because of the mixtures of the race, that they see themselves as the superior ones. Okay, so you as French Canadian, you as Hispanic, whatever, you as German, Swiss, you as whatever, okay, Irish, you're not of their bloodline. And even though, you may be white, they're after you. You're next. You do understand that. That's what's taking place. That's what they're doing right now. That's why the Department of Homeland Security, that's why FEMA, that's why 9/11. Please understand what's going on here. So I'm absolutely sick to death of churches. Because I'm telling you, when you don't cast the demons out, when you don't break the curses, then Lucifer runs hog wild. And that has been exactly what has taken place. So 90%, notice remember there was 90% of the American Indian, 90% of the U.S. population is under the sights. Again, the Mason Jews founded, making basically everything under their political, their military, the UN, the Illuminati control. This all is of a Luciferian doctrine to implement war against God's people. This is a spiritual control, both a physical, as we know, I've been talking about psychotronics, electronics. We have satellite weaponry that through their energy weapons can literally fry you. Dealing with it here, with the stuff. But let me tell you something. I'm just trying to get it into your brain that this political system that we have was in place intentionally to divide America. The education system, all the way from kindergarten all the way up through college, was for the implementation of basically brainwashing, a social engineering, a psyop. And then we have the Luciferian, MK Ultra, Monarch, CIA that has been there's an estimated 10 million SRA, satanically ritually abused individuals in the United States, 100 million worldwide. I believe that's a conservative number. So now you have a massive amount of people who are broken, who can be triggered, who basically will, with their not knowing it, will do whatever the Illuminati wants. Do you understand that? So when we look at Congress, when we look at the House, the Senate, we look at the executive branch, that is exactly what we've got. When we look at the Pentagon, we have such an infiltration there, we don't know who's who. The CIA, the Mossad, remember the Mossad of Israel, the CIA of America, basically of MI6 as well, that are the ones who created ISIS. So again, Albert Pike, World War III. Do you understand, in rallying the troops, otherwise the so-called Christian church, under the control of Albert Pike's religion, to support this? But the whole goal is to exterminate you. Whoever's listening, I'm talking to you. And when they have you, they're going after your kids. Okay, do you understand that? From the Native American Indian to you two today was the whole plan from day one to alter, to change the face of this planet, to bring in the god of Lucifer, the destroyer, Leviathan. That's what's been going on the whole time. And they had to do it in chunks. They had to do it in a time period. As Julie has been pointing out, the times, the dates, and everything that has been, exposed shows that there's a number system. There's a time frame. There's an order of things for them. And through divine intervention, that has been delayed over and over and over again. But we're at a point in time that we've run out of time. And again, with Hillary here supposedly on the run, I don't believe any of it. Okay, again, the whole plan, I see what's taking place is to potentially put the elections on hold, which will keep Obama in office. Okay, so whatever tactic they want to do, again, that is for the bondage, for the extermination, the elimination, the genocide of you and me. And so if you are a so-called professing Christian, if you are an atheist, if you are whatever, you need to understand we're all in this together. And what they want to do is they want to wage you against us and us against you. And then just basically that's what the Civil War was a prime example of that. I can't even imagine the carnage, the suffering. As I mentioned before, that the term soldier's heart came from the Civil War because of the trauma. We know it as post-traumatic stress, and post-traumatic stress is the devil's playground. Then you get into World War I. Okay, notice the names. So we had soldier's heart. Now we have battle fatigue. And then World War II, shell-shocked. Vietnam, we have post-traumatic stress. Funny how they've got a name for that. But basically what it is a fracturing, an altering, an implementation of trauma-based mind control. Whenever you have somebody that's under this, and if that's your situation, look at the troops that are killing themselves. The American soldier, somewhere between 20, 25 a day, it goes up and down, are committing suicide. How can this happen? How can the greatest country in the world, supposedly, can this happen? Because we are based in a curse under the Masons. The Masons founded by the Jewish system. Judaism. It's got nothing to do with Moses, got nothing to do with Abraham. Do you understand that? This is a Luciferian serpent curse. And that curse is coming on our children. That curse has been on you. I had the opportunity again this week. I think I mentioned that to minister to somebody, and I'm going to be doing it again this weekend. And believe me, God's been waiting patiently for us to do this. He gave us the tools. He gave us the knowledge. He gave us the ability. He sent a son, and we rejected. You think that him being sacrificed on the cross was a rejection? The fact that he paid the price, the fact that he empowered us, and we did not do it, is not a good thing. I mentioned before there was a line drawn in the sand. Now, again, there's a way out, and that's to be obedient. That's to continue with business as usual in the name of Jesus Christ, the Great Commission, Matthew 28. Now, I know a lot of you that listen to the show, again, are atheist or from the occult or whatever, and you just don't believe in that. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand the only way out of this is Jesus. I've said it before, Jesus plus nothing. So you see that the Catholicism, you see the Masonic lodges, you see all of the other stuff that's been brought into these Christian churches has done nothing but put us in bondage. So when I say Jesus plus nothing, I mean Jesus plus nothing. The fact that man has inserted all of this other doctrine is the basic error that has put us where we are today. Now, again, look at Germany. Look at what has happened to them, and that's what Obama's trying to do here. The amount of influx of people into this country that we have no basis of understanding who they are and what they're capable of doing, other than a great deal of them are of military age, that when there's an uprising, they will be something to be dealing with. Carnage, mayhem, poverty, extermination. That's what is planned for America. So don't get mad at me. Don't kill the messenger. You want to just learn about the occult? Okay, then fine. Go somewhere else, I guess. Because I'm trying to get you to understand that this fight is because the man and the woman of God, in the name of Jesus Christ, has rolled up their sleeves and has clenched their fist and said, "Come on, devil. I've got my God behind me, and I've got the blood of Jesus Christ on me, and that means in the name of Jesus Christ I stand against you. Because without him we fall." And that is exactly what they've been doing, is picking off, taking out, removing, rubbing out anything that has to do with Jesus. It's not too late. Because you see, each of us will have an accountability. Each of us will have something that will have to, our works will be tried. I don't care what anyone else has said to you. How do I know this? After 16 years of kicking the asses of demon after demon, I know how they think, I know how they are. I know what they've been doing. And I can assure you that their job has been to take every man and woman of God who is a professing Christian, whether born from above or not, and to get them to renounce and to walk away from their job. And because of that, there's an accountability. The day that I don't stand for that is the day that I've done you a disservice and allowed you to fall to the slaughter. Because every man, woman, and child that has not done what I've told them to do, they've spent nothing but day after day in torment. Some come in here and just want to get the demon, the monkey off their back so they can go back to business as usual. And that's not what I do here. I'm here to get you ready for the fight, and you've got no choice about that. You will be in the fight. The question is, what tools are you going to have? I know this is heavy. God bless.
You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network. Visit our website at www.oneblueraven.weebly.com. Often duplicated, but never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network. That's the Blue Raven Network.
Often duplicated, never replicated. You're listening to the all-new KBLU Radio Network, Blue Raven Network.